right? Huh?
Okay.
What's that?
You didn't hear right.
You know, you fight the white world. But you know what? We did.
Okay, thank you all for your patience. We'll get started here this morning at the APCD board meeting. First item on the agenda is if you rise and Pledge of Allegiance, please. Hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Second item of the minutes is postponed to January 12th. Any item 3 is board comments? Please, Mayor Holden.
I just wanted to congratulate Councilmember Brennan on being reelected.
Well, thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Or somebody else would be chairing this meeting today, right? Well, thank you. Mayor Holden?
Just a quick comment. I was a couple minutes late getting here. We at Procter & Gamble this morning, we just unveiled and flipped the switch on their, fittingly enough, rushing over here on their 1.3 megawatt solar generation project they just completed and started to utilize. It's with Sun Edison. It's a private company that has done more private sector solar than anybody in North America, and this represents, I think, 1.5 out of 80 megawatts that they've done in the entire North America. Interestingly enough, the project itself is the first project to be done in a market other than retail or office. It's the first project of this size with a manufacturing company in the entire North America. So it was an exciting morning, and it's great when the private sector gets out in front and without mandates and gets things done. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. All right, thank you. Item 4, closed session. We are not going to just no closed session. Item 5 is the consent item. Okay. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, Madam Clerk's unanimous approval. We'll move to that was item 6. Item 7, formal item. Approval of proposed new project funding and existing project funding amendments under Carl Moyer Air Quality Standards. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Brennan and board members. I'm Chris Frank, Air Quality Engineer. This year's Carl Moyer program provides $1.8 million in incentives to Ventura County businesses to replace older heavy-duty diesel engines with new lower-emission equipment. This year we received applications to replace or repower 44 pieces of equipment. After evaluating each application, we ranked the projects according to their cost effectiveness, and today we're recommending that you approve $1,612,027 in funding for the 14 most cost-effective projects. These projects would repower 10 commercial fishing boats and 2 sand and gravel loaders and replace 8 farm tractors with new lower emission equipment. We're also recommending approval of 3 agricultural assistance grants totaling $122,871 to repower 6 irrigation pumps. The total emission reductions from these projects will be 45 tons per year of ozone precursors, 1.5 tons per year of diesel particulate matter, and 346 tons per year of carbon dioxide. We will administer the grant agreements and ensure the grant requirements are met before releasing funds to the grantees. Your approval would authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to sign the grants and make minor administrative changes. The grant applicants were notified of today's meeting, and some are here today. Early next year, we will have recommendations to expend the remainder of this year's funds. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any comments, questions?
I just have one. It's a great program. We've been doing it regularly. I like the program. I just would like staff to, I've asked this question a few years ago too, just what are the reassurances for the public that, you know, this is this is all on the up and up, that there isn't some favored treatment going to everybody. I'm not suspecting it or anything else. I just want to be able to explain it to the public. It's a lot of money for some of these organizations, and so what kind of safeguards do we have to make sure that this is, everybody feels like they're treated fairly in the process, et cetera? Can you explain those safeguards that we have out there for us?
We do follow a very strict set of guidelines, and we have our own policies and procedures, and all the books are open to public viewing. Every project is ranked by cost effectiveness. So as we explain every time we come to your board, we show exactly what the cost effectiveness of each project is. So there's no question as to why one project's being funded over another.
Two questions. Is there usually agreement with the cost effectiveness ranking that we give? I mean, do people object and say, hey, this analysis wasn't done properly very often?
There's almost always agreement.
All right. And my second question, how widely do we advertise this program so that we're sure that everybody has a fair opportunity to apply?
The categories of eligible equipment have really narrowed recently because of all the state regulations that require this type of work to be done. Once this type of work is required, the funding is no longer available. So it really has come down to fishing boats, farm tractors, and a few other categories. So they're easily identified people. And really, we rely a lot on the local sales force of diesel engines, because that's really where the engines come from.
Same answers we got a few years ago. Thank you. Right, I appreciate it.
Supervisor Park?
I would just comment that at the Southern California Association of Governments meeting, Southern California Air Quality Management District came forward, and we're talking about that they're going to begin a program that's going to provide Carl Moyer for agriculture pumps, and I think and generators, and that's something we've been doing for quite some time to remove diesel particulates. So it's nice to be at the forefront of that.
I guess I would just comment in that obviously what you meant, the fishing industry and agriculture are certainly very marginal industries, and our ability to help them certainly and clean the air at the same time I think is really a plus. One of the things I always concern about, and I do want to say that last night looking out on the water and seeing all the squid boats out there like little Christmas lights, it's nice to know that some of those boats are here. But there's times of the year I go into the harbor and there's an awful lot of commercial boats that aren't here. And we spend, what's the criteria for folks? Do they need to be home-based here, spend X amount of time here in this air district? I know obviously they have to go where the fish are, and sometimes that's up north and sometimes that's down south. How do we judge? Is there somebody that goes back and checks, let's say a year from now, that goes back and says how long the Apollo spent in the air district? Again, trying to back up public money and make sure we're doing the right thing. Is there some checks and balances in regards to that?
That is a real problem with commercial fishing boats, because, like you said, they do travel around, and they're hard to keep track of. Short of putting GPS devices on each one, which is not really that difficult these days.
Yeah.
Short of doing that, on the fish or the boat?
On the engine.
Short of doing that, we rely on what their historical operation was. And their historical operation is based on the fuel they purchase in this county and in Los Angeles.
And I recognize that the follow-up is sometimes very difficult, but that we do have technologies now. And I'm not trying to discount that these folks don't deserve it. It's just that our ability to say that we're spending it in this air district helps. Now, I recognize that anything's offshore comes onshore, and sometimes stuff from Solana Beach blows all the way up here, and vice versa. But I know that's one of our concerns. So maybe there's an opportunity to do some kind of a software tracking GPS type program that might help in the future. And again, so that we are directing it exactly to this air district. And I'm not saying these people aren't worthy, as Supervisor Bennett said the same thing, but I just think our ability of checks and balances, we do really good stuff in the very front, and then the public go, well, why didn't you check up on this and this, that, and the other? And it's not as easy as they certainly they think. But so I would encourage us again to look at some ways of just being able to justify it again as the public scrutiny gets more and more with the less and less tax dollars. Thank you.
Okay.
Other members? Okay. Pleasure of the board in regards to this item? Okay, got a motion, I'll second by Councilmember Morgan. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, passes. Thank you. We'll move to item 8. Proposed revisions to the existing grant funding for school bus replacement projects.
Hi, Chair Brennan, members of the board. I'm Stan Cowan, APCD engineer. Back in May of 2008, your board approved an award from ARB for a $5 million school bus grant program. And I'm happy to report that we heard from ARB last week that we will be getting the last portion of that grant based on some sales of some bonds. Over $1.38 million will be spent on new projects for next year, so that's good news. On this item today, there are 2 school districts that need amendments to their grant agreements. First, Ventura Unified is changing their mind on their school bus replacements from CNG to lower emission diesel buses. This is because their budget does not allow the huge expense for fueling infrastructure. We're talking $200,000, $300,000 for a CNG fueling station for 4 to 8 buses. And the guidelines do allow them to switch to diesel, so we're recommending that be done. The grant will decrease accordingly, about $100,000, because they will have to come up with additional match funding because they're going to diesel, $10,000 per bus. They won't need their CNG grant of $56,000, and the diesel buses are less expensive as well. And the second proposal is for Simi Valley Unified School District. They are going to opt for 16 retrofits instead of 12. So that's 4 additional ones at a cost of about $63,000. Those are the 2 items before you. We recommend action and recommend that the APCL be allowed to sign those grant agreements. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stan. Any questions? I guess only one, again, a comment. We funded, and Stan, were you involved with the hybrid? Was it diesel electric that the Unified School District?
That's Ventura, yeah.
And that was just as a trial basis, is that?
No, that was funded, and it should be delivered next month.
Okay, so it's not online yet. So,
not online
but
yet.
they didn't want to re-up to go to that program, or that's more expensive?
Yeah, it's added cost. It's hybrid bus is $200,000.
Right.
So with the budgets these days, it's without additional funding, they couldn't do that.
Great. And I'm wondering if you could bring that back to us at a later date, just the results of their, just having one bus, obviously, but is not like having a fleet, but how they're doing and where they're running up. And so hopefully, maybe if it is running good, we can maybe encourage more of that.
Yeah, great. Sure.
Great. Okay. Pleasure on the board? Okay, thank you. Motion by Supervisor Zaragoza. Anybody opposed? See none, thank you. Motion carries. Move to item 9.
Chair Brennan, members
Michael?
of the board, I'm Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. On September 15th of this year, your board directed staff to develop a transit incentive program utilizing $50,000 in the district's motor vehicle registration fees. The program would be open both to public and private employers, also focusing on students, seniors, and members of the military. The purpose of the program was to provide incentives to members of the public who aren't currently utilizing public transportation, so they will consider utilizing public transportation as an alternative to their private automobiles. APCD staff envisioned a countywide transit subsidy program that would be open to all county transit providers. I touched base with Ventura County Transportation Commission staff, and I let Gold Coast Transit, being the largest transit provider in the county, they have about 60 to 65% of the countywide ridership, know that we were considering this. And about a couple weeks after that, they invited me down for a meeting on October 15th to go over a proposal that they felt would be workable countywide. The Gold Coast proposal would focus on outreach to members of the public that aren't currently using public transit, encouraging them to use a greener method of transportation. The outreach could include print, cable television, which is quite affordable, and radio in both English and Spanish. They would also use online advertising, and then of course the sides of the buses in essence can be mobile billboards. The focus of the outreach would to let people know that there's been a lot of changes to the routes, services improved. Maybe it's time to rethink your options and actually give this a try. And they're also willing to share all of the outreach materials they develop with all the other county transit providers. It would let people know that there are free, limited-term bus tickets available. These free tickets could be distributed via the current ticket outlets and some temporary short-term outlets such as public agencies, chambers of commerce, large employers. And we believe that their concepts would be an appropriate use of a portion of these funds. Also on Thursday, I'll be attending the Transit Operators Advisory Committee meeting at VCTC and get some additional input from the other transit providers on this, and that's where I am right now with the project. I'd like to get any feedback if you want me to continue on that path or perhaps alter that path.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you bringing that back and working with Gold Coast on that. So we'll start on this one.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go.
I give my time.
Thank you. I support this. I think it makes a lot of common sense. I think Gold Coast would do a good job with this program. It seems very appropriate. So.
Thanks, Supervisor. I was just going to comment as chair of Gold Coast and Chair Brennan is former chair, and we have Supervisor Saragos who's on Gold Coast. It's a very appropriate time to consider this. We have been working hard in modifying our routes to make them user-friendly, cut down headway time, and putting new buses on the road that are clean and attractive. And our goal is exactly that, to get the riders who have a choice to either drive or take the bus to take the bus. And our ridership continues to increase. In the last few years, we've shown significant increases. So it truly is about marketing at some point where people need to somehow get motivated to try the bus. And I think from Gold Coast's perspective, sharing all that information with county, other providers in other cities, other than Gold Coast, would then stretch it throughout the county.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, if I make just one quick question. Obviously, begs to ask the question: are we going to be giving folks that are paying to get on the bus now, free passes? Does it make a difference? How do we really have we worked that out?
That's
are we just going to lose, the fare box and again, kind of help out? And so I know is it quantifiable that we can really determine that we've got some new riders that are getting out of their car?
I don't think you can rule out someone who already rides the bus going, hey, I'm going to get a couple free tickets. I think working through the chambers to the large employers, and like I said, we're going to focus on the community colleges. We have, obviously, Cal State, Cal Lutheran, the military bases, and we're going to try to focus where we don't think people are utilizing it right now. But obviously, there really isn't a way. If somebody came in and said, I haven't tried it before, take some tickets, you wouldn't know. So, the one advantage on the limited term pass, and this is something that VCTC had pointed out to me along with Gold Coast, is we feel much better about it. Let's say you gave out $50,000 of free one-day passes. Since they don't turn that in at the fare box, we'd never know if we actually utilized those free passes. So some of that money would just, in essence, vanish. If someone takes their free pass and never rides the bus, it stays in the desk drawer. We didn't buy anything other than our little card. But with the limited passes, what Gold Coast was thinking is they can see, and since they're in essence just a pass for that bus ride, it comes in the fare box, they can see how much of the money is actually being doled out, and they can say, okay, since they expire at the end of the month, I'll print more of those free ones until we utilize the money. So I feel a lot better about that approach, making sure that our money actually goes to putting someone on the bus.
Okay. And last thing I would just say, and I know that Gold Coast is looking at it, and I think it's really an enviable policy, and that is anybody 65 and over could ride the bus for free. So I know that mixing that in with people that are probably paying now along with this kind of program so hopefully they're the ones that will have to figure out how they can break and compartmentalize it, but I still think we're heading in the right direction. Mr. Morgan?
You answered my issue. I thought maybe we should concentrate heavily on the colleges, two universities, because when I went to school, I didn't realize there were bus lines that go to where I needed to go. And so I think that's a good idea. You have a waiting captive audience out there.
Oh, go back, Supervisor Park.
Yes, and I agree. Colleges is a really good one, and we have also Ventura and Oxnard and all those other. Also, I would like to be able to get free passes to the East County, and we have Simi Transit and the Thousand Oaks Transit, so it's not just so I can ride for free. No, I think it's against the law that I ride for free. What I would ask is that we look at having those free passes go out to East County, also to the East County Transit providers, not just Gold Coast.
Yeah, well, actually, that was the idea. But I told Gold Coast to kick off the meeting that, just back of the thumb, my thought was distribute the 50,000 based on ridership. So they would get the lion's share, but all these other providers would get a share. They would be able to utilize any outreach materials if they so choose from Gold Coast, but they would also receive money for tickets.
They'll receive funding so they can do the free. Okay, and then also, when you were talking about different outlets, I believe you mentioned that current ticket outlets also, and to me, I wouldn't do the current ones where people are going to go buy tickets anyway, but actually try to get to those non-conventional, like you mentioned, chambers of commerce, colleges, maybe hospitals, things where there are transit stops and we can utilize the large. Yeah, well, that's what we're looking for, new customers.
I think it's a good program because it'll fill up the buses. Some of the buses are not full all the time, and it's a good promotional gimmick too. To get our more riderships, and this is going to be a trial basis, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it'll help. It's going to help the whole transportation process.
Gold Coast was also, and they said they felt the same way that the other agencies would respond very positively, because with their tight budgets, they haven't really had the ability to go out and let people know about the new routes. So I think this could really help out.
Move approval?
Move approvals or second?
All right, any opposition? Thank you, Board. Unanimous. We'll move to the next item, item 10.
Attached to the board letter is the district's unaudited financial status report for fiscal year 2008-2009. Last fiscal year, we reported an excess of actual operating revenue over operating expenses in the amount of $1.2 million. Based on the final report, the actual realized revenues were over budgeted revenue by approximately $183,000. This was due in part to modest increases in the number of new permits, which kind of belies logic during a recession, but also revenue received from the statewide portable equipment registration program, which we implement on behalf of the Air Resources Board, and increase in interest earnings, which is another thing. Even though interest rates are going down, we had a cost savings again last year, and our fund balance is growing, so that's counteracting the effect of the low interest rates. And also increases in the amount of fees paid through our source testing program. Also during the fiscal year, we received an early reimbursement from our federal grant. It was a partial reimbursement, but it did come in early. And we received several one-time settlements in our fines revenue, which is kind of what I've told you in the past, that even though we budget $100,000, we collect substantially more over time. It should also be noted that a portion of the increase was due to some permittees paying their annual renewal fees early, and this amounted to $197,000. On the expenditure side, our operating expenditures were below the adopted appropriations by $173,000. Savings in salaries and benefits were mainly from the deletion of one position. That was a support position in our information systems group, and the retirement of one employee who was actually in the Tier 1 retirement, and obviously that person was replaced by someone in the Tier 2 retirement category. Actual services and supplies were lower as a result of our strict adherence to scrutinizing expenditures and reducing spending to stay within budget. Lastly, for the fiscal year, we've also reported the funds to administer the pass-through grants, such as the school bus and the Carl Moyer. Revenue and expenditures associated with pass-through grants are reported separately from the district's operations. They're in attachment 4 to the board letter. And pass-through grants, including the administration costs, have corresponding revenue, so there's no impact on the district's operating budget. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Please.
Kind of a personal question. Seems like every time you come in here, your budgets are always in tremendous shape. I'm surprised you and your staff hasn't left and somebody's bought you up someplace to do this every place else in government. This is tremendous. This is always great. Congratulations on making this work.
Well, I think the district, it's not just the APCO, certainly. The district staff is seasoned. We're in a very enviable position. Everyone was hired basically 20 years ago, and they've got 20 years experience, and with time, they become extremely efficient. I mean, our permit staff, we have one individual, Kirby Zazala. Other districts would love an industry to steal them away from us, but, we do have a flexible work schedule and, excellent benefits, and I think we'd be able to retain some people like that, and it's been a huge benefit to the district.
Go lock it up somewhere.
Right, and we as the county increased your rent, right?
Okay.
Might as well, they got plenty of money.
Yeah. Any other, okay. Okay. Any opposition? None? Great job, Michael. I know staff's working, and you're right. Everybody's with reduction in staff, and I see that obviously some grants and some payout earlies help too, so we'll just hold on to it for a while. Great. Next item? Okay.
I just wanted to note on the cancellation, I think if you look at that letter, it does say that there's the potential, we don't have any actually air-related business, but there's a potential that we might have to meet if there was something final occurred with the SEIU labor contract, and they needed to get to your board.
Great. Okay, so this will be our last meeting for 2009. Okay. Okay, nobody on opposition receive and file. Okay, and application for state subvention funds.
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? None? Okay, thank you. Item 13, minutes, South Dakota Basin-wide Air Pollution Control Council. Receive and file?
I'd like to, I'd just like to point out item 7, that's CAPCOA's model general plan policies for greenhouse gas documents. Certainly hope we'll be pushing this at the county level, but I do recognize it's one more project for our planning staff. But certainly something that lots of people are moving towards.
We did provide that to the cities already, that document. I know the city of Oxnard was very anxious to get that document because you're working on your general plan, so your staff was actually fighting at the board to get that one.
Yeah, CAPCO and that white paper are really leading the way. I think really led the way, certainly pushed out there. Everybody's working hard to catch up, and I think is doing a pretty decent job. But they certainly have laid it out to break this into manageable components, and so I'm happy to see that happening. Okay, receive and file. Okay, motion. Okay, thank you. Anybody in opposition? See none? Okay, we'll go ahead, and I believe that's item 14 is just the informational. Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you. Yeah.